Annalise Antoinette, and I've been invited here today with Applied Hermetics. Thank you to Rufus Opus for the invitation and extension. And today we're going to be talking to Edo of Eidos, the Ivory Tower. We're going to be discussing astrology and some interesting topics that have fascinated both Rufus and Edo. Edo can be found on Facebook. He is an enthusiastic student of both astrology and spiritual counseling. Edo, thank you so much for being here, and Rufus, thank you for having both of us.
Well, thanks you guys for coming. I appreciate your company and our little camaraderie that we've been developing over the last little bit. Um, yeah, as you know, Annalise, I met Edo online a few weeks ago. Or actually a few months ago, and we've been talking off and on. And I thought he was this little old man, and it turns out he's not a little old man. He's a strapping youth who is full of all this understanding. But I thought he was older because he actually understood all this really cool stuff about the esoteric application of astrology, and that's like a major weak spot for me. And he was able to explain it to me in nice, simple terms. So I thought it would be nice to bring him on. He mentioned that he actually understands a lot about what's actually going on behind the scenes as a result of his studies of transits in his own life. And
just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Well, yeah. Well, thanks for coming, Edo. I appreciate it. I wanted to bring you out here and help you share your information and get it out there a little bit.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me. Yes, sure. Where do we want to start?
Well, how about what's your spiritual background? What brought you into astrology?
Oh, okay. Oh, so well, astrology for me was a tool that I came into contact with while looking for stuff that could explain how the world worked.
Mm-hmm.
It stems from a personal research about how the world works. And when I stumbled upon astrology, it captured me. It didn't let go.
Why did it appeal to you in particular? What was it about astrology that seemed to fit?
Okay, so basically, I started to look around and see what around me could give me the highest, the most complete understanding of the world in the in the most complete way, in the most integrated way, with all layers of reality, of being, which something that could encompass human experience, life events, explain the metaphysical, and well, basically nothing else. This is reality, right? So, and I think I found that in astrology, and because astrology, at first, of course, when I first started to study it, I started with the modern material that you find around, in blogs and stuff, and slowly but surely I started to, in a way, see between the lines, and I guess I recognized that the archetypal and symbolical nature of the astrological elements, and also all the symbols, even the astrological sphere, the sphere of the sky, the circle, the circumference, has a symbolical meaning, has a significance. And I just came into astrology after I also studied a bit of Hermeticism, although if I tell that I was studying the Kybalion, many hardcore Hermeticists will like cut my head off because they think that it is not traditional. But it was one of the first books that introduced me to concepts like the law of mentalism, the law of correspondence, and you could call it the law of correspondence, but I guess in the end, in the Emerald Tablet, when Hermes said that as above, so below, and as within, so without. I guess when he said that, it's basically the same thing, said with different words.
Yeah, my problem with the Kabbalion was always that I don't know how to say it. It's Kabbalion, kind, whatever. My problem with it was that not that it was wrong. It's just that it was right, and it said it too clearly for it to be meaningful. It's like everything.
Mm.
Energy follows thought, and all that. I mean, yes, it's true, but reading it doesn't make it make sense. It doesn't have the context around it. And it was like
Yeah.
a distillation of all these hermetic principles and truths that are accurate, but without any context to make it meaningful. You know what I mean? So that I just felt like it was like cheating.
Well, in a way, yes, it's very general. Um, but I guess you can look at it as a yes, as a weak point, but also as a strong point, so to speak.
Yeah.
I wasn't really into more complicated stuff, but it was what I needed uh, when I needed it, and it was a good introduction. And then there are seeds, I guess, inside of it that slowly, um, how do you say, when a seed gradually sprouts, they have to sprout and grow, and they do with time. Of course, you can deepen your study of Hermeticism and the Hermetic sciences, magic, astrology, and alchemy. But having some kind of map, even if it's pretty general, I guess it's still good. And then many concepts that are in there are also they mature in a way inside of you, and they develop and they grow, and you start to make connections, and you see that yes, everything really is interconnected, everything really has a chain of correspondences. And then of course you can go deeper and study more specific stuff. If you look at astrology, for example, it's so incredible. You have the living proof, also the symbolic theoretical proof, and also the logical proof if you start to make Gedanken experiments, thought experiments in your head about stuff going on. You hypothesize stuff, and you see that everything works, everything corresponds, everything falls into place, and it really follows the law of correspondence, or the law of as above, so below. Yeah, I don't want.
Well,
I don't want
can you give us an example of something like that would help kind of make sense of how it all works there about like for
Yeah.
Or maybe even like how you talked about how yesterday Mars was in Taurus from 29
right.
degrees during the
Yeah.
capital chaos.
So yesterday was, I guess, a very important day for all the world, especially, but especially for America, because it happened what happened. So the Trump mob assaulted the Capitol building, and the interesting thing is that Aries, exactly in those moments, was at about 29 degrees Aries, and about, I don't know, 58, 59 minutes,
What
just on the
what what was in there? I'm sorry, what was the planet?
Mars in Aries, in the
Uh-huh.
last degree of Aries,
Okay.
also in the last minutes. So it was, it ingressed into Taurus exactly in those moments, just uh, some minutes after they took the Capitol building. And okay, so at was it five, like 5:25, 5:27?
527, I think.
Yes. Mars ingressed into Taurus, and by 5:40, the National Guard had cleared up the whole building and established a perimeter around it, and started to move and create an even larger and larger perimeter of security around the building. and then the boat counting had resumed. The cool thing is that I kind of I started to think that, well, to be honest, I didn't really think about it. I just, just took my smartphone, I opened the astrology app, and I looked at Mars, and I saw that Mars was at 0 degrees, 0 minutes of Taurus. And I was like, oh, wait a second. When did it go into Taurus? And I saw that basically it was 11 p.m. here, and 11 p.m. Yes, half past 11 p.m. here, and Mars had just passed into Taurus at 11:27. So I was like, that's interesting. I didn't really think about the whole situation. However, after a while, I reflected, I thought about it, and um, I thought about Guido Bonatti and his 146 considerations on horror astrology. And there is the 30th consideration, which is really for horror astrology, but it is interesting to consider the symbolic value, the symbolic significance of this. It basically says that when a planet is, when a significator or the moon is in the 29th degree of a sign, then the business indicated by the significator will come to some kind of abrupt halt, or it will not come to pass. Mm-hmm. And I thought that symbolically, if you think about how everything is interconnected symbolically, if you think about a planet that is, let's say, on the border between a place, and he's like on the tip of the finger of his feet, at 29 degrees of Aries, 59 minutes, and it's just about to go into Taurus. If you think about it, symbolically, it means that that planet has ended a cycle, and it's also preparing to enter into another sign, which has other themes and has other
like attributes.
Yeah, attributes, traits. Yes. So the planet, it's like the planet signifies something, and then whatever you start in that moment, and that planet signifies that, it is bound to end in a way or another, because it just corresponds. I don't know, it's analogous. Mm-hmm. It has some kind of correspondence between what happens up there, even symbolically, because the tropical zodiac is symbolical, and what happens down here on Earth. So basically, the cool thing was that, yes, they stormed the Capitol building and they gained control of it, but then when Mars ingressed into Taurus, it took something like 13 minutes for them to be pushed out, and the protest completely stopped. Everyone went home. There were people, I was following one live channel, one of those live YouTube channels. There were people like, chilling out with music, doing post interviews, like, yes.
It was like what's it called, tourist protesting.
Yeah,
it then I had some coffee,
out.
rioted.
It fizzled out. It dissolved. It dissolved into nothing, basically.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I guess when you call the National Guard, you can't resist that. I guess those people are we're gonna oh my God, how do you say that? Would have been pushed out of the building nonetheless. Mm-hmm. However, why is this whole thing interesting? It's because in magic, in astrology, and I don't know, in alchemy, I still didn't study alchemy. So this is one weak spot, yes. But everything manifests in through something that resembles normal mundane means. So if you make some kind of ritual for Jupiter to give you money, for example, you're not gonna conjure up a sack of money in front of you. It's not just gonna appear, in front of you. This is one of the most used examples. Or if you conjure for love to Venus, she's not gonna make a woman just pop out of existence in front of you that loves you, etc. Yes, you have to go out, and you will find that the means to know people, the means to create money, become more available than before to you through rational means, mundane means, material means. I don't know how to say it. In a pretty normal way.
Yeah, natural law, natural forces.
Yeah.
And action is required on your part. I mean, you can't do the ritual and then just sit there in your living room and wait for things to happen. You have to get out in the world, is what you're saying, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Although I guess that if you, I don't know, if you conjure for some money and you stay home, maybe you can conjure for somebody that loses money and the money flies in your garden and you'll find it. I guess. But it's going to be very, 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 very not probable.
Well, I figure people lose $4 million every day, and they just leave it on the ground right in front of my house.
Yeah, exactly.
It happens. like every day, somebody's going to do that somewhere, so it might as well happen to me.
Yeah, right. And also, I suspect that the intelligences are not quite okay with that. Like if you work with deities and intelligences, they kind of push you into doing the work as opposed as maybe demons, I guess. Even though.
Well, do you think that they're? Do you think that that's like a moral judgment on their part? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes. Or maybe no, I don't know. Maybe it's just that with time, with eons, with millennia, God just understood that the intelligences had to create some kind of growth incentive for people to grow even while doing magic, because in a way you could say that you are cheating, but when you start to do magic and you do this kind of stuff, you start to realize that it is not. You still have to do the work. You still have to put up. You still have to do the work. Yes. So you still have to grow. You still have to struggle. You still have to do the magic and do the actions also. To open yourself up to the world giving and the divine giving you whatever you asked for.
Yeah, and it's a learning process too. It takes a while to figure it out. Like you've been studying transits for a while, right? And how they impact you, so that you can. The way you described it was like you could find a transit and kind of understand what it means if it's coming up, right? So you had a story about your girlfriend.
Do we have to really?
All right. Well,
I thought we had.
We don't have to.
We don't have to.
I already thought that we had some material from the last interview. Maybe you could like cut something in.
Yeah.
Well, we would love to hear, how you incorporate astrology into your everyday life. Are you checking your chart each day? How are you incorporating it into your everyday life and making the most and benefiting from it?
Okay, so what I do every day is basically just consulting the transits of the day, and of course seeing what I just see how the planets are placed in my natal chart. The transiting planets, how they are placed as compared to my to my natal chart, and this is what what astrologers mean when they say that they look at the transits of the day, for example. And basically, transits are a very basic and easy way to look at what is happening and what will happen. So they can be used as a prediction tool to predict what kind of event will happen in the future, and also what happened in the past. If you want to be more acquire an understanding of what happened in the past. You can also do that by seeing how the planets were configured, so to speak, in the sky at that moment when you lived that event, and you can get some insight. You can infer some things by comparing them to whatever was by comparing whatever was happening at that moment with the planets that were transiting and with your natal chart. Anyway, you can predict events with transiting with transits and with predictive astrology, but you cannot predict exactly what specific event will take place. You cannot predict if you are going to walk for 15 meters and 3 centimeters, and then you will turn 45 degrees to the right and you will take this choice. No, that is a very detail-oriented way of looking at things. And if you want to look at it astrologically, it is also a very mercurial, Geminian way of looking at things. And I found that astrology is not that much detailed. It is very specific in its genericity and very generic in its specificity. I don't know if it makes sense. But astrology gives you the power to predict the kind of events, the archetypal nature of the events that will take place if you were to choose to predict something in the future. For example, I can use transits to see what will happen during the day. And I always suggest to use the moon as a predictor, basically as a fast feedback system to understand the archetypal nature of the planets, because you're basically comparing what is going on in the sky right now at that moment with your natal chart. So the moon is the fastest of the planets. It orbits the Earth in about 29 days and a half. And this way, you basically have a complete cycle of all planets as viewed by the moon, archetypically. So as viewed by the lenses of the moon. And you can live through an entire cycle in your life in 29 days and a half. And the moon is so fast that in a single day, you can have multiple lunar transits to your natal planets. So if you want to experience the archetypal nature of Mars, for example, or of the Sun, or of your moon, if the moon is making an aspect to your Sun, to your Mars, or to your moon in that day, you're gonna go through those events as related to the planets that are involved. So if you are, for example, living through a square of the moon to your natal Jupiter, for example, and you see that the square is happening at 5 p.m., you will see that in the immediate hours, minutes and hours before the transit, your life will start to get the archetypal influences of this harmony, because the square is a disharmonious aspect, and you will start to live, or you will live an event, or you will live the feelings associated to that that is associated to the moon and to Jupiter. And the moon is associated to emotions, women. It is associated to dreams, to your unconscious, to your also your thoughts. Traditionally, the moon is co-ruler with Mercury of the mind, and emotions and thoughts are pretty interconnected. So it is also associated to your um, unconscious patterns. So the way that you react um, automatically, unconsciously, instinctively to your instincts.
Hello?
Yes, can you
Thank
hear me?
you, Austin.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
don't.
can hear you.
Okay, are you recording, Annalise?
Yes, it's still recording.
Okay. So I guess that if you can hear me, it's all right. I guess
Yes, you
Rufus
just keep
pressures.
going. You're great. You're
Okay.
doing great.
Um, so if as I was saying, if the moon is squaring your Jupiter, if the transiting moon is squaring your natal Jupiter, you will experience something related to the disharmony of the moon and what I just said, and Jupiter, which represents your philosophy of life. Jupiter represents also the way you view life. It represents expansion, your way of moving in the world um, in a higher way than Mars, though. More like your way of moving in the world as backed by your philosophy. So your point of view, your way of looking at the world. And also in a negative way, it represents excesses because it's also growth. So it's also spiritual growth. Um, but in a negative way, it could also represent an overpowering presence or being too extroverted. If you, for example, yes, if the moon is squaring Jupiter, you could eat too much, for example. You could let go of limitations. You could be too outspoken with somebody, and you may offend somebody because uh, you cannot contain yourself and you don't even realize it. Um, you could have some kind of emotional upset that is related to money or excesses. Um, you could, yes, you could have some kind of disharmony with, I don't know, your mother or uh, um, your daughter, your, um, oh, hey, welcome back. Also to uh, your wife, or simply from women friends and your girlfriend. Um, I don't know. It really has so much ways of manifesting that it's baffling. And those ways of manifesting, they are a multitude because we are talking about archetypes here. It is symbolical in its nature. So detractors of astrology, scientific people could say that it is too general. So you could say basically anything and um, anything that happened, anything that you notice could be taken um, as some kind of confirmation that the transit happened. For example, this Moon square Jupiter transit. And you can throw in all the scientific stuff and mumbo jumbo like uh, confirmation bias, the Barnum-Forer effect, cherry picking events that happened, etc., etc. But when you start to study astrology, you can see that it is very specific in its genericity,
Mhm.
and very generic in its specificity. And there is something in those events. There is something that tells you, yes, it is general, but it is also specific enough. It is also specific to the archetypes that are involved in that transit, and you see it over and over again every
Mhm.
day, especially with lunar transits. That it really is astonishing, and it really is a gateway into, I guess, into the metaphysical, because I always suggest to use lunar transits because they're a fast feedback system to see that this stuff works. So, and we live, and that we live in a much more complicated world that materialists tend to think we live into.
Well, it's really cool that you mentioned the moon transits and that we can get such immediate feedback from them, because that seems like a much easier way to start to learn and see how it's affecting each of us personally. So I'm really glad you mentioned that aspect of it. And before we wrap up here, is there anything else that you wanted to mention or talk about? Or Rufus, did you have a last question for Edo?
Well, is there any way to reach out to you and acquire your insights and services?
Yes, so I've opened a Facebook page which is called Eidos, the Ivory Tower on Facebook, and I offer spiritual counseling, and I offer also I'm also studying talismanic magic. So right now I have Identical Jedi talisman, which is good, especially in these troubled times, for anything that involves material wealth and also security in the house. And I guess also Agrippa and Hermes say that it is good for legal matters. So if you want an edge and if you have legal problems and you want an edge in that, you can use that too.
Legal
And
problems in
yes,
the time.
I make talismans from every once in a while. Every time that I see that there is an appropriate window of time, because you have to do it in a window of time which is astrologically appropriate for the spirit to carve the talisman and call in the spirit. So yeah, you can check my services there.
And eventually we will also be able to find you at Academia Hermetica as well, correct?
That's
Oh,
right.
I hope so.
Yep.
Yeah. And
www.
Thank you.
I'm gonna spell out Eidos, the Ivory Tower, in case anyone is just listening to the audio. It's facebook.com/EIDOS, Eidos, the Ivory Tower. If you are watching this visually, yes, Edo is pointing to it right there on his name, but if anyone's listening to just the audio, it's EIDOS, Eidos, the Ivory Tower. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening or watching, and thank you for being here to Applied Hermetics, Rufus Opus. I'm Annalise Antoinette, and Edo, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Really honored. Thank you, Rufus Opus.
Yep. And I'm sure I'll be back again soon. So.
I'll be
See you
glad
guys.
to.